Hello, my name is J.R. Tallman, and today I'll be taking you through a quick demo of how to create an EFT file from your vendors to upload to your bank account. NetSuite's electronic payments module is free, so if you have not already installed it, you may do so in your environment. Do note that if you need customized templates for your EFT file formats, direct debit file formats, or positive pay file formats, you may need to use the advanced electronic payments module, which is an additional cost. We're not going to be going through the advanced electronic payments module today, but certainly keep that in mind if one of the file formats does not work out for yourself. Once installed, you'll notice a payments tab at the top that we'll be covering today. In fact, the first thing we're going to be going through within this demonstration is hovering over payments, setup, and bank accounts, or bank details. We do need to set up a bank detail to specify the appropriate EFT format that we're going to be using, as well as give it the correct bank account that we're going to be processing these files with. This list, as you can see, I've already set up two in the system. One's using an ACH CCD PPD format. The other is using a SEPA credit transfer format in the system. We're going to be looking at the first one here, which is ACH. But again, this would show you all the different bank details that you have set up for all your different subsidiaries and companies, as well as the corresponding bank account. So let's go ahead and edit this first one. You'll also notice that if you have direct debit or positive pay templates associated with this, you could use it on the customer side or with positive pay on the vendor side. So if you are setting up a new bank detail, you'll go ahead and click on New Bank Detail. Since I've already set this one up, that's why we are in edit mode. The first thing you'll do is give it a name. Typically, I see here as best practice to keep the same name as the GL bank account, which I have not done since this is a demo account, but certainly you'll want to go ahead and select the GL bank account that you use and give it a name when you are doing the electronic payments module. Go ahead and give it a legal name and the print company name. That's usually the same, but feel free to adjust as necessary since it is required. You'll go ahead and select a subsidiary here. This one's going to be used with our parent company US. And then you'll also want to note a currency that you are using this bank account for. Okay, and if you recall, in NetSuite, bank accounts are currency specific. So this will automatically populate based on the GL bank account that you've selected above. I'm not going to enter a department, class, or location because that is not required in this instance. But if you want to default a department, class, and location on the bill payment file once it's produced, you can certainly enter that information here. Additionally, I'm not going to enter a file name prefix. We're going to use the file name that just gets generated out of the box. One thing to keep in mind here is the file cabinet location. You're going to want to have a nice file cabinet location set up. I already created one that's called ACH files. I believe there is a default that comes with the system, but I do recommend having a new location that you specify where these templates are going to be housed once they're created, and then you could lock it down to specific users. So not everyone in the system is seeing the files, and they could potentially manipulate them. The next key important piece when setting up the bank details is the EFT template. All right, so in this case, like I mentioned, I am using ACH CCD PPD format. You could use any of the other standard file formats within the system. If you don't see a template that might be useful, you would need the advanced electronic payments module. All right, and that's an additional cost where you could customize the XML file to the bank specifications. Most of the US file formats do work out of the box. It's typically one of these ACH specs, right? So ACH, CCD, PPD, CTX, freeform text. If you're using customers on the direct debit side, you can go ahead and select another file format. Again, it works very similar as on the EFT, but I just selected ACH PPD as the template here. Okay, this demo is not going through the direct debit side, but I'll make another video that goes through the customers. Same thing with the positive pay. If you wanted to enter a positive pay file format, you could select that here, and then you'd be able to produce that positive pay format and produce the file to upload to the bank. But I'm going to keep this blank as we're just going to be focusing on the EFT side. Once saved, once you enter the information at the top and you save it, you'll need to enter the information down below depending on the EFT template that you selected. right? So we're doing EFT down below here, so you can see the template details are already filled out, or at least populated, and then I need to populate the information based on my bank account. So I've entered some demo information down below here with the routing number, account number, company ID, and so forth. But this information should come directly from your bank, so you should reach out to your bank if you do not know the information down below here. Right. In addition, some of these other ones, such as the check digit, ABA, Federal Reserve routing symbol, right? These will automatically get updated, so you don't need to fill those in. It will come from, your routing number, account number, and so forth. And then the bank account type here, we have checking, and we're not going to add pad blocks just based on the specifications that we're using for this demo. Additionally, we're not going to be processing this batch automatically. We're going to actually create a vendor bill, and then we're going to process these in really a batch format where you can see how to create the file to upload to your bank. If you were using direct debit, you wouldn't want to fill out that sub-tab. We're not using that, so I'm going to go past that. Same with batch details. We're going to be creating a batch, but we're not going to be doing anything automatic. Finally, before I save this company bank details, NetSuite's electronic payments module does allow approval routing to specific individuals or an individual, right? So you can determine what the approval type that you'd like. So in this case, a vendor payment, if it's over, in this case, $100 million, it would go to the next level. So I have level 1, and it would go to myself as the approver, although you could select multiple individuals if you need to have multi-level approvals, and select a payment approval limit down below here. Right, and you can have up to 3 levels, so if you need to have different amounts to go to different approvers based on those approval limits, you can certainly select that up to 3 levels. Right. So we'll go ahead and save this, and then we'll go ahead and process a vendor bill, but first we'll take a look at our vendor record where we do need to specify vendor information related to their bank details. Okay. All right, so first things first, right? Set up the bank details underneath payments, set up bank details. Next thing you'll want to do is go to your vendors and set up the banking information for your vendors based on this EFT template. Right. So I've already had and created one in the system called Test EFT, so we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So once you install Electronic Payments module, what you'll notice is a new field underneath the email, phone, and address sublist here, or field grouping here, is going to be the email address for payment notification. This allows you to put multiple email addresses aside from the one email address in the email. This is the default email field. But if you want to put more than one email address, you can enter it in the email address for payment notification, and you can separate that out by a semicolon. What this will allow you to do then is when we go through the electronic payments module, you'll see when we actually produce that file, we can actually send out a template, right, a PDF or an embedded HTML message to the email on the vendor, or additionally, the email addresses for payment notification. So it does give you increased visibility, or I guess processes to send that payment notification to more than one email address. Additionally, with the electronic payments module underneath the sub-tab, you'll notice a new sub-tab here called bank payment details. So once the vendor is saved in the system, you'll be able to enter new bank payment details. But before we get into that, you should note that there is a field or a checkbox called EFT bill payment. This is important as this will note whether it can go through, this vendor that is, whether it can go through the electronic payments module within NetSuite. If this field is not checked, it will not go through electronic payments, no matter if they have a bank payment detail listed here or not. So this should be checked off. I would recommend checking this at least for all your EFT bill payments. If you want to check it off for all vendors, that's fine, as it's not going to go through electronic payments if they don't have a bank payment detail down below here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and check that off, and then we'll go ahead and save. And then once it's saved in the system, what you can do then is enter the bank payment details. Those can be imported if you'd like. If you are importing them into the system, just make sure that you are running workflows and triggering SuiteScript, as there is some advanced functionality with SuiteScript in the electronic payments module to make sure it's getting the correct information. But if you're doing it manually, like we're going to do today, you can click on New Entity Bank Details. I am going to go and click on Edit here just because I've already filled out this information. And it will take me to the bank details page for this vendor. Okay, so it's very important to select the appropriate payment file format that you're going to be going through electronic payments with. All right, so when we first set the payment file up for that bank, it was underneath Payments, Setup, and Bank Details. And remember, we were using the ACH CCD PPD format. Okay, so just so this goes hand in hand, I'm going to go ahead and select that format. The type is important here, as there can only be one primary type, and that's the type that is going to go through electronic payments. Okay, so when it looks at the vendor record, it's going to be looking at the primary type, and it's going to be using that bank account number, name, whatever type of format that it's using. Okay. And then you'll want to go ahead and select an account number or set an account number, bank account for this particular vendor. Here I've used some demo information. Again, these are not real account numbers or bank numbers, but this will be useful when going through and setting this up in the system. NetSuite does do some validation, so if your account number or bank number does not match the specified length, when you try to save this, it will error out and make sure that you have the appropriate length and valid account number or bank number. And then just like we saw on the bank account setup with our country check, bank code, processor code, this updates automatically based on the type of formats as well as the number that we specify here. Okay, so if all looks good and you've set this up appropriately, when you click Save, it will process. Again, if not, you'll get a warning that says the invalid length. You might not have it 10 digits or 9 digits, depending on what type of format that you're using. All right, so just to recap, we set up the bank underneath Payments, Setup, Bank Details. The next thing that we did is went to the vendor record. What's key on the vendor record is to make sure that the EFT bill payment box is checked, as well as you have a primary payment file format set up. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go underneath Transactions, Payables, and enter Bills. And we're going to enter a bill for this test EFT vendor. All right. All right. And let's go ahead and put test EFT as the vendor. We'll use the standard accounts payable here. We'll make it approved. It doesn't need to be approved to go through electronic payments. And then we'll go ahead and enter an account down below here. Let's go ahead and select any account that I have set up. All right, so we'll go ahead and advertising expense here. Let's set it to be $500, and we'll go ahead and add this. And we'll go ahead and save the vendor bill. Now, once the bill has been saved, you could go and make payment as a check within the system if you wanted to. Having that box checked off on the vendor record, which makes it EFT eligible, does not prevent it from being made payment via check or in the native process within NetSuite. So you'll still see this on the bill screen. You can see the make payment, or if you were going to transactions, payables, and pay single vendor, you would see it there, as well as you would see it underneath the pay bills if you're doing a batch process. All right. But what we're going to do is we're going to bypass that process, and we're going to go through the electronic payments module, which is underneath payments again. We're going to go to payment processing, and then we're going to go to bill payment processing. Right, so this is the page you would come to if you're using the vendor EFT side of the house and to process your bills that you have, and the vendor is selected for EFT. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the bank account that we initially set up in the system, which was ACH. And this will automatically update then. And once it updates, then I can select the appropriate AP account, which should then show me the applicable vendors that have EFT eligible, as well as this particular payment file and AP account associated with the vendor bill. All right, so we'll go ahead and select the 2000 accounts payable account. And you can see at the top of the page it is going, and this will update. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I should see that bill that we just entered. And you can see here, right, April 1st, 2019, I just entered this one, test EFT, so it is listed down below here. If you don't see your bill down below here, that means you probably haven't set up the vendor as EFT eligible, or you don't have a primary bank accounts associated with that template, that vendor with the appropriate template. Okay, but before we select that bill down below here, we can come back up here. There are some filters at the top if you wanted to. I'm not going to select these filters. I recommend keeping these blank at the top, but it is important to make sure that you select the bank account and AP account so you can see the transactions down below. Moving on to the payment information field grouping, we have date to be processed, which is today. We'll go ahead and keep it as 4/1. Posting period is going to be in April. We're not going to change that. EFT file reference note, we can enter a file reference note. This isn't going to be part of the actual file itself, the text that you upload to the bank. Typically, I'll just put in here as April batch. Okay. Aggregate by payee, what this will do is if you have different bills for the same payee, it will combine those into one payment to be made to that particular payer, right, or vendor in the system. Otherwise, it would make these separate payments when you upload to the bank. So I do recommend having this checked, and it is defaulted. We don't have anything else for the and, so we'll keep that blank. And then, as I mentioned before, when you were setting up your bank account, you could default the department, class, and location if you had those as mandatory, or if you needed to put those at the header level of the bill payment, you can go ahead and select department, class, or location. But in this instance, I do not have it required, so I'm going to keep that blank. And then finally, you go ahead and select your transactions down below here. You can go ahead and click on Mark All if all the transactions look good to you. Otherwise, in this case, I just want to do the one that we just did today, which was the $500. You could adjust the discount amount or payment amount if you wanted to, but we'll keep this straight as a $500 bill payment. So once that's complete, we can go ahead and click on Submit here, and this will actually process the bill payments and produce the file that you can upload to your bank. If you had approval routing turned on, which we do, and it was lower than the threshold that you have set for the amounts, it would need to go through that approval process where you would need to approve before the actual EFT file can get produced in the system. So what will happen now is it will take you to this page, and I'll just show you where this page is at. It's underneath Payments, Payment Processing, and Payment File Administration. Right? That's where you'll find all your payment files that have been produced. Maybe it's been deleted, maybe it's been canceled, maybe there's errors. You can certainly see that based on the status on this page. Right? So you can see here the file process is queued. This will go through a process of actually queuing it up. It will process it. It will actually create the file, and it will let you know where you're at in that particular process when you click refresh. Okay, so you can see the last process initiated is processing the payments, and it's marking the transactions. So what it's doing right now is it's actually going through the bills, right, that I've selected. I only have one bill there, and it's making the payment. So it actually produces the payment file or the page, right, the record within NetSuite. So you don't need to do that, and then it will eventually create the EFT file that you can upload to your bank, which is just in a text format. Right, you can see when I clicked refresh again, it's creating the payment file. That last process was actually creating the bill payment. So it already created the bill payment, and it does give it a unique number you can see down below here. If you were to go to your bill payments, you can easily identify which ones are EFT versus check and so forth based on the document number down below here. So I'll click refresh one more time. If all goes well, what you'll see is the file processed will say processed, right? So this looks good. In fact, there is a file reference that's filled here, and it shows me my text file that I can download and upload to the bank to make that ACH payment. Okay. This is also stored in that file cabinet location, which we initially went over when we were looking at the bank account, so keep that in mind as well. Some options at the top here. The first thing you'll notice is a rollback button here. What this will do is it will show for 24 hours, this button, and it will delete everything that you see on here. So it would delete the bill payment, it would delete the payment file administration record that it got created. It basically just reverses everything back to square one where you could reprocess it. And that only shows up for 24 hours after you've created this payment file. The next one here is the reverse payments. This will always show, and it will allow you to reverse individual payments down below. So if you want to reverse, I only did one here, but you could click on the reverse payments and basically reverse out any payments, whether it be an individual or the entire batch out. It just voids those transactions. It doesn't delete. So I would recommend using the reverse payments. A, it voids those out, and then B, it also allows you to select individual bill payments instead of the entire transaction. The next one here is the email payment notification. So if I clicked on that, what would happen is it would take you to another page where you could email the payment voucher notification to the vendor. You could customize or use a standard template within the system, and then it would use the email address that's on the vendor record, as well as the additional email addresses if specified, which I initially showed you. And then last is the recreate file button. What this will do is it will recreate the file. Typically don't see this used too often. Really it's only used if you have an update, right, to the file itself. So if you need to make a modification to the specs, you could update the spec format, in this case ACH, CCD, PPD, and then you could come back here, recreate the file, and then upload it to the bank in hopes that it gets accepted by the bank so it could make the payment. So those are the different options once it gets generated with the payment file administration. And again, if everything goes smoothly, you'll see processed, as well as the text file to upload to the bank and the bill payment record itself. So finally, if I take you back to the bill that we did, which was test bill, you should see this is paid in full, right? NetSuite automatically created that payment, and it would show underneath the related records as that bill payment that we were just seeing on the administration record. So that's a really quick high-level demo of the NetSuite electronic payments module using vendors. If you do have comments, questions, feel free to list them in the comments of YouTube below. Otherwise, I hope you view my other videos on YouTube, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you.